now. I'm confused. I certainly don't do it naturally anyway. I know what I should be doing. I'm sorry.
I think I'm conscious, but no, I don't know. That's brilliant. You're brilliant, mate. Well, so what do you? How much do you know about? Just by an example, how much do you know about paddling? Do you think? Do you think there's lots more for you to know, or you know a little bit, or you're learning, or just describe?
Learning, halfway there, lots to learn, but know a fair bit.
So, and when I say, I don't mean you're incompetent, because you're a very good paddler. I've seen you paddle, but what I mean is you're just coming to terms with knowing what you need to know. And this happens, you know, the idea is you progress through and you get good at something, and then you change a load of things, and very often it takes you a step back. So you sort of spend different times in different phases, yeah. So when you're learning a new technique or new aspect of the stroke, then you'll be conscious that there's lots of things to learn. So you'll be conscious incompetent. And what I mean by that is you're conscious that you haven't quite mastered it. That's all that means.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Right. So most people here are probably somewhere between conscious incompetent or unaware and conscious competent. That's all I'm saying, right? I'm not going to go any more into it than that. But this whole process, this whole one-to-one process is getting you further up the scale to the unconscious competent. But expect there to be setbacks, expect myself and Nikki to be explaining things, and you thought we meant that and we didn't mean that. And that's why we need that one-to-one coaching discussion as well. Because even the 6 or 7 people who've spoken to me already, some people will say, I really, you know, and they're pretty good paddlers, and they say, I really do not know what I'm supposed to be doing. Now, okay, everyone has minor crises of confidence, and that's where we as the coaches come in and say, actually, to be quite honest with you, all we really need you to do, I like that, that's good, I just need to make a few adjustments there. Yeah, so we're here to coach you, but we're here to support you first and foremost. Yeah, but expect just to be going up and down this little continuum, and we'll change some part of your stroke, and then you'll have a bit of a knockback, and then you move forward and back and forward and backwards, forwards, and eventually it will fall into place. That's it. That's I've said that in a very complex way, but that's exactly what I mean. So don't, you know, the problem is as people learn skills, and this as you get older, because us adults get polluted, our minds get polluted by consequence. We're very reluctant sometimes to make changes because we know what we're doing, and we don't want to go back to that, what we think is like an earlier stage of evolution. But very often we have to take you back, have to regress you a little bit in order to progress you. So just please trust the process, go with it, ask loads of questions, and if we've got the language wrong, we'll change the language. That's all. Okay, that's all. Okay, some half smiles there, so that's fine. Right, okay. 2 new drills. The first is called under pressure. It's not really a drill, so you know about heavy. So I need some. This is a bit of interactive. So somebody, let's pick on Debbie. Heavy. What's all that about? What am I talking about?
Heavy from the start, all the way through the stroke to the back and out, keeping that pressure on the whole way.
So what I'm really talking about is whatever you catch on the front end, yes, you keep. Yeah, that's the absolute basic fundamental. It's really hard to do. So it doesn't matter if you are like massive, full of muscles, that sort of stuff. It doesn't really matter. We're all different and different sizes, shapes and sizes. But whatever power we're applying at the front end, we carry all the way through. But we've divided the stroke, if you like, for this purpose of this drill into 2. So, Tom, what do you understand by? We talk about the front and the back of the stroke. Where does one start and finish, and where does the other one start and finish? What's your understanding of that?
The front of the stroke is getting the right catch position. So it's about the entry at 45. Getting you paddling and starting the stroke. Okay. So putting the power on went from the right position, and then the second half I'd see it as finishing the stroke, so completing a full stroke and getting as much power in as possible. Okay. But it goes beyond that, which we've learned this week, which is also get propelling off it. So it's beyond the end of the power. It's also the starting the snap phase, so bouncing off the back of the stroke. Don't leave it in too long.
Right, because lots of people, and this is really, I wanted to ask a question about this. Lots of people are familiar with snapping forward. Yeah. And what they do is they come out the back and they snap forward. Okay, fine. But what we're trying to do is actually initiate that by this imaginary wall of water, which is level with your hip. So you're actually pushing off something. Yeah. So it's a snap forward. It's a smart move forward, but we're actually like springing off. I call it, springing off the wall. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about there. Okay. So where is that? Well, I'm sort of giving you the answer there. Where is that wall? Is it level with the hip? Is it in front of the hip? Is it level with the thigh? Is it behind the hip? Where is it?
The hip.
Right.
It's
so
the hip.
okay, it's your hip, but what's level with the hip? Paddle blade, paddle shaft, hand, what?
Blade.
I'd say hand.
Okay, so we've got two variations, and this is important actually. So we've got those who've got the pictures on, who thinks
hand? It's hand, yeah, not blade. Your blade's probably slightly tilted back.
Yeah. I think it's your hand.
right?
Yeah.
So your bottom hand doesn't go behind your hip, yeah? Now obviously the blade's going to go behind your hip, but you're keeping your body, or you're keeping within your area of strength and dexterity. So what a lot of people do, especially if they're outrigger paddlers, they will have the blade out by the hip. Now outrigger, if you paddle outrigger, is significantly different because it's a very shorter stroke. The body angle is different. The blade is shaped different. And because it's a more of a front end E stroke, you're out by mid thigh. And that's got to do with the shape of the blade and all sorts of things. With dragon boat, apart from the very modern blades, they're flat, completely flat. Some have got a small ridge. That's in the rules these days. But you've got to work the blade all the way through to the back of the stroke. The back of the stroke means bottom hand, level with the hip, not beyond. Yeah. Now, the impulse on the blade will be slightly negative, obviously, at that point, and that's fine. But you don't want to go in much beyond that, because then that's going to start pushing the nose of the boat down. Okay. So that's important where the back of the stroke is. Right. So, Catherine, where's the front? If that's the back of the stroke, where's the front of the stroke? I'll give you a clue. It's in front of you. Where?
Yeah. As far as you can just uncomfortably reach, or just comfortably reach. 45-degree angle. Reaching and leaning. Like,
okay.
Yeah.
But just give me a bit more. Yes. I know what you mean, but give me a bit more context, or get more. When you say as far as you can comfortably reach, what does that mean?
It shouldn't be too comfortable if you're holding it there. Like I've noticed when we've done like a pause drill or before somebody starts, that to hold yourself in that position gets uncomfortable. So you are twisting, you're rotating, and you're leaning forward. The blade roughly for me is probably at the person, or if there was a person sat in front of you, their kind of hip, just a bit forward, like their mid thigh possibly. So a twist and a lean as well, a rotation and a lean, bringing your hip forward as well and your shoulder.
Different people call it different things. You've probably heard me talk about the ICE zone, and by that I mean impact, contact, engagement zone. All contact sports. Watch me. Yeah, if you hold a Swiss ball in front of you, or arm's length, that sort of thing, the area where you're most strong and dexterous. And you soon know, because I'm sure you sat in a pause position and that's nice and comfortable, and then you overdo it and you're straining a couple of inches. That's all it is. If you're straining to get the shape, that's too much. So that's why when you do the pause drill, if you do the front end pause drill, that's the position you're coming to, and you can hold it for 10-20 seconds. Yeah. And you know that if you then press down, engage the core, drive with the leg, you'll be strong from that position. So I call it the limit of your strength and dexterity. Yeah. There's other ways of finding that, but okay. So that's the length of the stroke. And all we do in the heavy drill or heavy light drill is just break that down into front and back. So when you do the drills, you know there is an impulse to be had at the back of the stroke. I've mentioned this because in one bit of feedback I got this week, somebody was talking about it sounded like they were paddling hard at the front, not going soft, but letting it tail off in the middle and then building it up again. So if this is the front of the stroke, it's not up, down, and up at the back. It's up and keep the power all the way, and then spring off. Yeah, it's that. It's not that. Okay, so there's no soft spot in the middle, and that's what makes it so bloody hard, because there is no let up at all. But like I say, what you're doing by working the back of the stroke, then for me, it's a third of the power I can deliver at the front, and that's worth having, yeah, or worth exploring. But it's not the sort of thing. So when Nikki does it with you, you wouldn't necessarily go out and do 3K. You might do 500 meters. If you can keep it up for 2K, fantastic. It's a very, very anaerobic stroke. The only way you get conditioned by doing it is trying it and seeing seeing at what point you get technical failure. Okay. Because the other thing we all tend to do is we do technical drills. So when we do a technical drill, any sort of technical drill, the idea is you do the technical drill and then you put the technical drill under pressure. So for example, you might do a number of rounds of front end pause, and then you'll do maybe a 500 meter sprint. What's the point of that then? So Abby, what do you think about that? So when you do technical drills, why do you then often go straight into putting the stroke under pressure? Why do the two go together?
So you can hone down on what you've been practicing in the technical drill.
Yeah, because what tends to happen is if you don't do that, is people will do the technical drill and they'll paddle beautifully, and then they put it under pressure and it goes to rats. You see what I mean? Because the whole point is you train the technical drill and then you put it under pressure. The first few times you do it, the first maybe 100 times you do it, then you always default to a different form. It's just by marrying the two together, eventually it will come. Some people, the younger you are, the easier it comes. The older you are, the more set we are. I'm nearly 60, so that's what I mean by that. Old people like me, it takes a bit more time to get the cogs moving. Yeah. So you know about heavy. So the under pressure side of things is if you're paddling heavy at a true heavy. So we're talking 80 plus 85% pressure, your individual 85% all the way through. And Nikki measures it and you're getting 14 kph. Okay. So if everyone's putting in a genuine 85%, then 85% equals 14 kph. Yeah, for everybody. So then Nikki's got a measure. So if you're paddling at, in different conditions on a given day, if you're paddling at 13 kph, you're not putting in 85%. Yeah. So I know Nikki's a very popular girl, but she might become a little bit less popular doing this because this is hard stuff. Because what we want to do is get to the situation where if we call for 70%, so sort of aerobic, good working aerobic sort of pressure, then you can deliver a 70%. And so we've got to just, rather than just saying, we'll give us 70% and you do, I reckon that's 7 out of 10, then we'll peg that to a certain boat speed. Yeah. So when we're getting the best out of our hit styles, where you're doing 70%, 85%, 70%, 85%, you're dialing in a boat speed. So, 70%, for example, is going to be, I don't know, 10 kph, 10.5 kph, whatever. So what Nikki's looking for is 10.5 kph, 14 kph, 10.5 kph. And so we've got a measure about what you're delivering. Yeah. Right. So once we've got those, then the under pressure drill is really about dialing up 60%, 70%, 80%, and then max, back and down. So just be able to dial in a given pressure. It's like doing musical scales. Yeah. It's a drill. It's more a boat discipline drill and understanding where you need to be and what you rather me or Nikki or any other coach saying, give us 100%, and you're just paddling hard. So we're trying to dial in a pressure so you know what it feels like. Yeah. That's it. That's it. Rachel, any questions on that? Can't see any cats today. Oh, sorry, you're on mute. Am I making any sense at all?
Yes, you're making sense. I understand.
That's good. That's good. That's always the first time. James, that makes sense to you? Yeah. Okay.
Yep. All good.
Anyone think I'm talking Serbo-Croat or something else? Okay. Okay. Fine. Now, last thing I'll talk about today. 3-2-1 drill. It was devised by a friend of mine, Conrad Dorbecker, who's actually coaching. He's a Canadian coach, but he actually helps out coaching the US Senior Cs. Now, the reason this is relevant is because a number of people have asked me about what I do with my backhand, and I'm not in. I mean, I'm holding the paddle, but I'm not focused on what the backhand is doing. What I'm focused on, I think, is what the front hand is doing. That's one point. Just hold that thought. And the second point is a number of us paddle what I would say we come too far over too soon. Yeah. Now we've covered this clearly. When the blade is under pressure, it needs to be tracking back perpendicular to the water, given you've got flat water, and parallel to the centre line of the boat. Yeah. So we're not tracing round the gunnel. And if you think about it, if you're stroke seat paddling, you're paddling away from the boat in towards the boat because of the shape of the boat. And if you're at the back, then you're just going to track slightly away, but you're following the centre line of the boat. So we all got that. Now, you see people sitting in various boats, and they've got some, there's not any extreme examples here, but you often see people with some really sitting in really bizarre positions and head cocked over and all this sort of stuff. And what I tend to do with people like that is I say to them, just stand up and just close your eyes and just come to a nice natural position. And pretty much everybody in the world just stands in a nice position holding a paddle. They don't tend to stand like this, yeah, because it's off balance. So left to your own devices, you're a fairly balanced individual, all of you. I know that much about you. And if I just ask you to stand up, you just come up and get a nice balanced position, nicely centered, and you'll naturally come to a position. You won't start doing all this. You won't start doing all this stuff. And then I wonder why people do it in a boat. And I can only assume it's because they've been told to do it, because you wouldn't naturally do this stuff. So if you think about it, those who you are wondering about top hand, just stand up, paddle in the hand or no paddle, and just come to a position you think is natural. And I doubt if any of you will stand like that. I doubt if any of you will stand like that. Most of you will stand in a nice stable position. If you just point where you're going, let that hip move up, and forget this hand, hold the paddle, just point the paddle out, and this hand will come to a nice natural position, because that's where your body wants to put it. So listen to your body. Yeah, just don't force the issue or anything. Just let it naturally come to a nice swing into a position. And where you start with is your hip. So it all starts here. Okay, so we know about the rotation. And imagine my hand is connected to my hip. And just move the hip out like I was throwing a punch, and the hand will naturally go into the position I want. Okay? Okay, so far. Fine. Next bit, the 3-2-1. This all links up, I promise you. So you know where the back of the stroke is. Let me just draw the curtain, because unusually we've got a bit of sun here. So, excuse me to sort my lights out. So, right, so here we are. Let me find my. Hold that minute. Let me find a paddle. Right. Here we go. 110 uses for a broken paddle. So here we are. There's an outrigger paddle, but it's broken. So backhand is by my hip, yeah? Front hand is just over the gunnel. So if that's the gunnel there, backhand by the hip, you've just finished the stroke and you've just ended up lifted it out the water, okay? So the paddle's not inboard here, it's not outboard here, it's just literally carried through and just at the back of the stroke. that is position 3. Okay, so if you think about it, you can be doing a pause drill, just stopping at position 3. Okay, simple pause drill, stop at position 3. Getting from position, everyone okay? Thumbs up, yes, happy with that? Right, position 3. Position 2, it starts with the hip. So I activate the hip. Remember, I'm drawing with this hand. Sorry about the sun, it's sort of, I've lost a bit of light there. Let me just angle it so you can see what's going on. Oop. Oh, that's better, that's better, that's better, much better. Sun's starting to go down. So, position 3. Position 2, it starts with the hip. And I'm drawing with this hand and flexing the hip. Okay, but I'm coming up to a position which is isometric. What do I mean by that? So position 3, position 2. Okay. So this is sort of level. My arms are pretty much the same length at that point. Okay. I'll just flex the hip to that point. From the front to there. So I'm not too far forward. I'm just same length arms. Okay. And note that the angle of the paddle is 45 degrees pretty much, because I'm just drawing up to that point. Okay with position 2. I'll get, next time, I mean, when sun's not working, I'll get to take some pictures of me in a boat so you can see it better. So position 3. So you can do a pause drill to position 3, pause there. And remember, from 3 to 2, you just flick the hip to there, flick the hip to there. Position 1 is up and over, and position 1 is your front end pause. Okay? So you've got position 3, flick the hip to position 2, isometric, both arms the same length at that point, up and over to position 1. So you can do pause at 3, pause at 2, or pause at 1. Okay? 3-part pause drill. Once you master that or get familiar with that, you can then do the 3-part pause, which is 3 to 2 to 1. Stroke. 3 to 2 to 1. Stroke to 3, 2, 1. Okay? So you do a locomotion drill. So once you've done pause to position 3 and got familiar with that, then pause at position 2. Remember, between 3 and 2, you flex the hip and draw out. Okay, so you draw out to this point, which is halfway before you start going forwards. And what you're looking for at the back is 45 degrees down the boat. Okay, so it's all about symmetry, front, back, left, right. So 2, flick the hip to 2, up and over to position 1. Then you progress on to 3-part pause, 3, 2, 1, stroke, pause at 3, 2, 1, stroke. Yep. And then as you get more familiar with that, then you speed it up and speed it up and speed it up and put into a sprint at the end. Nikki.
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Yeah. I got it.
But what you've got to do is don't move them on until you're completely happy with their drill at 3.
Yeah.
And what I would do from the coaching point of view also is, as they're getting used to it, is you do stop at 3, stop at 2, stop at 3, stop at 2. Just get them familiar with the positions, because the other part of the drill is timing, phasing, and symmetry, front, back, left, right.
Yeah.
And what you'll get people doing is they, instead of pausing at 2, because it's unfamiliar shape, they'll go forward and they'll pause there. So really be strict with them just to get that shape and get the understanding that between 3 and 2, they're activating the hip.
Yeah.
And then when you do it under pressure, then that's the root of the spring off the back. It starts with that, with pushing off the wall, activating the hip, drawing and pointing, and there we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. It's as easy as that. that's all there is to it. But this drill, it also teaches you the track of the paddle. So there's a few people in the crew who are flaring out a little bit. So when you flick the hip, if you also lead with this top hand, then the blade will track out, not perfectly vertically, but more vertical than flaring out to the side. And it avoids some of you who, I've only seen a few snapshots, you may have a tendency to drop your inboard hand into the boat. So you may not be deliberately flaring out the side, but because you tend to paddle more like that, it just teaches you to flick the hip and then draw and point. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's it. That's all there is to it. It's easy as that. Now, before I finish off for today, what's your thoughts about that? So what do you think that's all about? Do you think, I mean, give me your thoughts. So let's see who's there. Chrissy.
So I understand that that it's about everyone entering and exiting at the same time, having the same shape and having the symmetry across the boat. I understand that. If I ever do a drill where I have to pause at the back and then we start normal paddling, I can't get out of that habit. And then every stroke then I'll be pausing at the back. So it's training my head, say, don't pause at the back. You need to go forward.
This is what I meant earlier about when I started going on about conscious competence stuff. What it means is then very often we'll deliberately, not trying to disrupt your stroke, but we're getting just so you know where the back of the stroke is. Because if you just leave people with their own devices, some will be here, some will be there, some will be ripping out the back of it. But just fix it. Of course, we slow it down like the old, it's like a threepenny bit stroke, if you remember that old, but then the idea is, as you do what I call the locomotion drill, so to start with, it's 3, 2, 1, 3, and it sounds a bit stop and stop. Of course, as it speeds up, it gets more fluid. So you're not really pausing at the various stages. It's just like a waypoint on the way, and it becomes nice and fluid. But sometimes we have to take you back in order to take you forward. Yeah. So stick with it. I do get it, but I promise you, you won't. When the wind change, you won't be stuck at the back of the stroke for the rest of your life.
Out of any of them, if I ever have to pause at the back, then we do normal paddling, and I can't stop pausing at the back.
But it is actually quite interesting from a coaching point of view when you slow people down into technical drills and actually realise what they're doing. And you might find that somebody can't get the timing right, and you think, what's the matter with you? Why can't you get time right? That's the wrong way to look at it. If you break it down, you'll see they're just delaying a bit. They'd have a little micro pause on the back and then rush in to keep up. So that very often when you slow it down, you can pick up some other little coaching points as well, which are difficult to pick up on the video. But okay, so once we get over hanging off the back, then how does it sound?
Everything else.
I hadn't noticed that in the videos, by the way. But
I don't normally. It's only if there's a drill.
Right. Well, that's an interesting point, isn't it? Because it's just I mean, you might actually be overthinking it as well. And I can't remember, it might have been you, Chrissy, you mentioned in an email, and I'm sure you won't mind me sharing it, about most people will find they are more stronger or more dexterous on one side or the other. Now, you wouldn't get novice paddlers to paddle both sides, but all of you are fairly experienced. So it's a good option to maybe either spend half a session or a session on your less preferred side. The reason I say that is because when you know pretty much what you're supposed to be doing, more or less in paddling, if you switch you to your less preferred side, you may be less strong, but very often you'll see people who are technically more proficient. And the reason they're technically more proficient is because they have to think about what they're doing. Yeah. And I still now, I've been paddling outrigger for years. I'm first and foremost a kayaker, but I'm still more fluid on the left than I am on the right. Even though I'm right-handed, because that's the way, if I go stable in the kayak, I'll do it on the left, and all sorts of things. It's just the way the brain is configured. But by doing it on your less preferred side, you think about it on purpose a bit more. Yeah. Yeah. So you don't want to do it to confuse people, but just to sort of focus on some specific points. Yeah. But do you get the point regarding slowing that down there from 3 to 2 to see how the hip is actually initiating the whole of the stroke coming forward. And if you get it right and you lead with this hand, you will naturally come into that nice position without forcing it. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Right. That's right. But it's important. If I'm saying that to somebody and it doesn't make sense, tell us and we'll change the message. Not entirely, just to make sure it does make sense. Yeah. Michelle, what do you think?
That's all good, Tim, but I just want to remind you that it is now 8:10 here, so I think you need to be on another call.
I do actually 10 minutes ago. Don't wait. They'll wait for me. Okay, fine. That's a very polite way of saying about time you shut up. Okay, fine. I'll leave it there. Any quick roundup? So Heidi May, any questions? Great. Joe, going through. James?
Nope, I'm good.
Tom, Rachel, Abby?
All good.
Everyone else? Any questions? Anybody? All happy? Okay.
Yeah. So Tim, I would just like to say one thing. On the ramping up drill that you were talking about, it reminds me of when I used to do my marathon running, and when I decided to basically do some speed training, and it basically took 25 minutes, 30 minutes of my marathon time, because basically what you're doing is that you're getting you're used to exercising at a really high level and then coming back down to not such a low level, but then coming back up again. So it is very, very effective.
It's a form of fartlek speed play. That same principles, exactly that. Just that, but understanding and controlling your power output is really, very, very useful when you're breaking it down. Anyway, okay, enough speak from me. Have a lovely evening. Thank you very much. And if you have to give me send me your feedback straight away. Yeah. Okay. In terms of your one-to-one stuff. Right. Good evening.
Thanks, Tim. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.